Baker's math is simple until you introduce sourdough starter. Then suddenly things get confusing. Do you count the starter as part of the formula? Is it extra? What does it do to your hydration? In this video, we're going to clear that up completely. You'll learn how to calculate your sourdough formulas accurately, without guessing. And more importantly, you'll understand why it works. By the end of this video, you'll be able to tweak hydration, adjust starter percentage, and control fermentation confidently just by doing the math right. Let's start with the basics. Baker's math is a formula system built around one simple rule. Flour is always 100%. Everything else, your water, your salt, your yeast or starter, is measured as a percentage of that flour weight. Why? Because it makes recipes easy to scale, tweak, and troubleshoot, no matter what size dough you're working with. Sourdough doesn't use instant yeast. Instead, it relies on wild yeast and friendly bacteria living in your starter. But even though the process is different, Baker's math still applies. You just need to understand what your starter is made of and how to count it. This is where most bakers get confused. Your starter isn't some bonus ingredient. It's made of flour and water, and that means it contributes to your total flour and water in the dough. If you don't count it properly, your dough ends up too wet or too dry, and your percentages won't make sense. Let's say your recipe uses 500 grams of flour. You want to add 20% starter. That's 100 grams of starter. If your starter is 100% hydration, that means it's half flour and half water, so 50 grams of each. Which means your actual formula includes 550 grams of flour and 350 grams of water, once you factor it all in. If you don't count the flour and water in your starter, your math is off. You may think you're working at 70% hydration, but you're actually closer to 80%. That means a looser dough, longer fermentation, and possibly a collapsed loaf. The difference might seem small, but it adds up fast. Some recipes list a starter percentage, others talk about prefermented flour. They're not the same thing. Starter percentage tells you how much starter you're using. Preferment percentage tells you how much of your total flour is already fermented inside that starter. For example, 20% starter means 10% prefermented flour if your starter is 100% hydration. To apply Baker's math in sourdough, start with your total flour weight. Choose your starter percentage, say 20%. Then calculate how much flour and water is in that starter and subtract it from your main dough ingredients. That's how you keep your hydration and salt percentages accurate. If you're doing the math by hand, write out every ingredient and where it's coming from. Main dough versus starter. Or use my Baker's percentage calculator that handles it all for you. Use the link in the description below. Either way, the goal is clarity. Once you're consistent with your math, sourdough becomes predictable and repeatable. Let's walk through a real example. You want a dough with 70% hydration, 20% starter, and 2% salt, using 500 grams of total flour. 20% of 500 grams is 100 grams starter. That includes 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water. So, for your main dough, you only need 450 grams of flour and 300 grams of water to hit your hydration target. Then add 10 grams of salt for your 2%. That's your formula. Sourdough isn't harder, it just takes a little more clarity. Always count your starter's flour and water. Adjust your formula accordingly. Stick to your percentages. And suddenly, sourdough becomes just as easy to manage as any yeasted bread. You're not guessing anymore. You're baking with precision. End of lesson. As always, I hope this helps someone. If you have a question, go ahead and leave it in the comments.